Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Lauren James, and I am the fitness and yoga program coordinator at McFetridge Sports Center. So thank you for joining me virtually. I will be guiding you through a gentle yoga practice, so totally beginner friendly, and we'll spend the time focusing on spaces that get really tight from sitting. So shout out to Patty. This was a suggestion I got from Patty to really work on the spaces that get tight from all the sitting. So whether you're working from home and sitting in front of your computer, or you are Netflix binging and sitting on the couch, a lot of spaces get tight from all of that sitting. So what we will focus on is the front of the chest and the shoulders, the lower back, the hip flexors, and the hamstrings. And I will talk a little bit about each of those spaces while we're there, but those are the spaces that we're gonna go after today to try to stretch and soften them up. So for today's practice, I always like to have something under the back of my head, a towel, a thinly folded blanket, anything like that will do. But you also will need 2 blocks or something like blocks. If it helps you, if you're familiar with fish pose, that's what we're gonna come into at the end of the practice. So if you don't have 2 blocks, 2 small pillows will do, 2 rolls of paper towels will do, just something that you'll be able to support your upper body. Blocks are ideal, but a bolster will also work, whatever you've got. I guess if you don't have blocks, you probably wouldn't have a bolster. That's sort of backwards, but you get what I'm saying. Grab something that you can support your upper body. Blocks are sort of your best case scenario. Okay, that's at the end of the practice. You can set that off to the side. We are gonna come onto our backs though. So work your way down onto your back in any comfortable position. Again, I like to have something under the back of my head, but that's optional. You're welcome to have your legs extended along your mat or have your knees bent and your feet flat. And then just allow your arms to rest about a foot away from the body with the palms facing up. Let yourself settle. Remember that as we are moving through the practice, you are moving at your own pace. You are listening to your own body, making your own intelligent and intuitive choices. So again, even here, however you position yourself is meant to be very comfortable, whether it looks like the way I've positioned myself or not. The hope is that you find yourself in a position that takes almost no work and is a space where you can really rest. And as you let your body settle into this position, notice your breath. We'll let the body rest and soften. We'll come back to the body. We'll focus on the body very deeply throughout the practice, but now focus on your breath. Just notice your breath. Notice something simple like, is your breath silent or does it make a sound? Is your breath smooth and fluid, or does it seem to stutter? Does it feel a little choppy? And now notice the length of your breath. Notice how long your inhalation is, how long your exhalation is. Maybe even silently count them out to truly measure the length of the inhalation and the length of the exhalation. Now you are more than welcome, to stay right here. Notice your breath, observe your breath. You don't even have to change it. You just notice the way that you breathe. Or maybe you start to manipulate your breath to lengthen most likely both parts of the breath, but especially the exhalation, the out breath. And I'll walk you through it. We'll inhale to a count of 4, exhale to a count of 6. But again, you are welcome to continue breathing in your own organic way. But to begin and follow along with my count, exhale completely. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 2 more. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Return back to your natural breath. Breathe in an organic and effortless way. Notice how you feel. The hope is that you are a little calmer, a little bit more at ease. Lengthening the exhalation was always said by ancient yogis to have calming effects, and now present-day scientists have proven it. So lengthening the exhalation can have a calming, quieting, relaxing effect on your overall being. So notice how you feel. Maybe come back to this breathing technique at any time if you need it. Continuing to notice how you feel and keeping your focus inward and present. If it feels right for you in this moment, you're welcome to set an intention for your practice. Ask yourself what brought you to your mat. What makes you choose yoga? There's so many ways you could spend your time, but something brought you to your yoga mat. So get in touch with that quality, that intention. Make sure it's a positive word or phrase. Give yourself a few moments to silently and slowly repeat it. Allow it to settle in your heart. slowly start to deepen your breath. And as you deepen your breath, create soft movements throughout the entire body. Fingers and toes, rock the head. Start to move the arms and legs. Take a few moments to move in any way that feels good. Oh, maybe that means yawning. For me, I guess it does. But maybe you move around, maybe you take a full body stretch. Remember that, again, you are listening to your body first and foremost all the time. So if something doesn't feel right and you want to do something else, you are more than welcome to do that. That's one of the really beautiful things about a home practice is you leave behind the intimidation of being around other people who a lot of times we think, oh, everyone else in the room is so much stronger, so much more flexible, which might really not be true, but we tend to think that about the other people in the room, in the class. And so sort of the beauty of being alone is you get to focus on yourself. Okay, so let's all meet with our knees bent and our feet flat. Feet and knees can be either together or hip distance apart, whatever feels best for you. Let the arms come out in opposite directions with the palms facing up, and let the knees sway from side to side. So just let them both fall to the right and to the left, back and forth, side to side. Okay, so this movement here, we are massaging our lower back and allowing the lower back to get a little bit of a twist. So this is, again, for the lower back. That's one of those spaces that can get tight from all the sitting that you are probably doing these days. You are not alone. I know that for me, in my body, I have been sitting a lot. It's a combination of doing work on my computer, but then also every evening being in front of the TV. And my lower back is the space that feels it personally. But all of the spaces, again, that we're gonna really focus on are all the spaces that can get tight from sitting. They're actually just some of the spaces that can get tight, but I would say the major ones. Okay, let your legs go to each side one more time. Just starting to warm up through the lower back. All of these stretches that we're doing, for the most part, should be very comfortable and pretty mild. There are a few that might be a little bit more intense, but everything we're doing is pretty mild today. Okay, so next time your legs come back to the center, pause here, let your spine come back to neutral, everything fairly symmetrical. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, hug your right thigh in towards your belly. Hold on to the back of your thigh. So your hands are at the back of your thigh, not your shin. Okay, so your hands are actually resting on your hamstrings, a group of 3 muscles that run from the back of the knee to about the sit bone. This is, again, your hamstrings, this group of muscles on the back of your thigh. They get really tight from sitting. Let's move them around. So keep the thigh where it's at. We don't want the right thigh to move in this next movement. Okay, so right thigh is going to stay still, but inhale as you reach your right foot for the ceiling. As you reach your right foot for the ceiling, maybe you can sort of peek at my leg. Notice that my right knee is still bent a little. My leg is not a perfectly straight line. That's not what we're after. If you get a straight line, it means you move to your thigh, which is not what we're doing. So your right knee will still be bent a little, even when the right foot reaches for the sky. So right foot reaches for the sky, take a deep breath in. Exhale, bend the right knee. The heel will come back towards the back of the thigh, just deeply bending the knee. Inhale, reach the right foot for the ceiling. Exhale, bend the right knee deeply. Inhale, right foot reaches for the ceiling. Exhale, bend the right knee deeply. Okay, now we're going to continue moving just like this at the pace of the breath. Inhale to lengthen, reach the right foot up. Exhale, deeply bend the right knee, right foot comes down. Now, we are going to stretch and warm up the hamstrings, but this should be pretty mild. You don't need to really reach your foot up for the sky. Oftentimes when I teach this and I watch people, sometimes their leg is shaking. That's too much effort. So we're not looking for anything too deep or intense, nothing that makes you shake or quiver.
When we're in other poses, like things like plank, which I don't know how many we'll even do today, but things like that, if you start to sort of shake and in poses like that, that's very normal, but this is not the same intention. So this shouldn't make you wince, make a face, shake, nothing like that. You want to feel a comfortable stretch through the back of your right leg. Notice that you feel a lot of it probably in the back of your thigh, or at least from the knee to the hip. Let's do this about 2 more times. 1 more time. And then next time you deeply bend the right knee, you can just release the hands from the thigh, let the right foot come back down. Knees bent, feet flat. Notice how your 2 sides feel different. You might feel it in the hip, the thigh, the knee, the whole leg, the whole side of the body, whatever you experience. Just notice the difference between the right and the left. Okay, and let's even ourselves out. So inhale. Exhale, hug the left thigh in towards the belly. Hold on to the back of the thigh so your hands are on your hamstrings, not your shin. And then when you interlace your fingers, interlace them the way you don't typically interlace them. So put the other thumb on top or in front so that it's the grip you don't typically take. Okay, now we're gonna hug the left thigh in, but the left thigh will stay fairly still. Inhale as you reach the left foot for the ceiling. Exhale, bend the left knee, deeply bending the left knee. Inhale, reach the left foot for the sky. Exhale, bend the left knee, heel drops down to the back of the thigh. And moving again with your breath. And so, again, whether you can see me or not, you'll notice that in my leg, but also on yourself, that left leg, as you reach the foot for the ceiling, the leg will not become a straight line. That's not the intention here. We'll have opportunities to do that action later, but right now there should be a little bit of a kink, a little bit of a bend in the left knee. And we want to keep the left thigh still. So we're just moving at the knee joint. Because again, the hamstrings run from about the knee to the sit bones. We want to keep one end still as we just move the other. So hip stays still as knee moves. Okay, we'll do this a few more times. Try to relax your shoulders, relax your arms. Let's do this 2 more times. Remember, no shaking, no quivering, that's too much. This should be a little more mild, a little softer. Let's do 1 more. And then when you're ready, release your hands from your thigh. Let your left foot come back down. Notice the 2 sides. Okay, take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, hug both knees in towards your chest. You can wrap your arms around your shins or the backs of your thighs, whatever feels best. You can rock from side to side or trace circles with your knees. Give yourself a few moments to move in any way that feels good. Okay, and then we're going to come up to a seat. You're welcome to roll straight through to the center or come over onto your side in a tucked fetal position. And then use the strength of your arms to push down to lift up. Okay, we're going to come up to a seat. We're going to be seated for a little bit. So I always like to sit on something. So a pillow, a block, whatever you've got. But ideally elevating your hips. You don't have to sit the way I'm sitting. This is just what's comfortable for me. You can sit with your legs crossed or however you need them to be so that you are comfortable. All right. So starting in this comfortable seat, sit up tall, really lengthen your spine. So here we're going to spend some time moving your spine in all of its 5 possible directions. One of those possible directions, and yoga is really the only format that acknowledges this movement. Anyone else you ask, they'll say there's 4 movements. Yoga teachers will say there's 5 because we believe that lengthening is an action. So lengthening the spine, sitting up tall, creating space between the discs, between the vertebrae, really lengthening up tall, but let the shoulders relax, the arms relax. Now we want to maintain the length.
as we keep moving through these other movements of the spine, don't lose the lengthening. Maintain length, softness in the shoulders, and inhale as you draw your belly forward. Lift your chest, lift your heart. You might even look up towards the ceiling. And as you exhale, tuck the tailbone, draw the ribs back towards the wall behind you. Draw your chin to your chest, look down at your belly button. Inhale as you draw the belly forward, lift the chest, lift the heart, look up. Exhale, tuck the tailbone, ribs back, chin to the chest, look down. Move with your breath. Inhale as you draw the belly forward, expand through the chest and heart, looking up. Exhale, draw the ribs back, chin to the chest, let the head hang. We'll do just a few more like this at the pace of the breath, moving from tail to crown by keeping shoulders and arms soft, muscles of the face relaxed. So I mentioned this briefly earlier that nothing should make you wince, make a face, or think ow, and that's true. I mentioned that some of the stretches that we'll do might be a little intense, but they still should not make you think ow, wince, or make a face. There's one that sometimes makes me wince for just a moment and then it goes away. So that's, maybe you're like that too, and that's okay. But nothing really deep, nothing, again, that really makes you think ow and feels painful. That means you've gone way too far. Okay, come back to that neutral spine, to really lengthening up, sitting up tall, reaching the crown of the head up, but letting the shoulders relax. Okay, inhale, circle the arms up, fingertips reach to the sky. Exhale, bring the right hand down, sweep left fingertips over, sweep up and over. Inhale to the center, lengthen up through the crown of the head and the fingertips, switch sides. Left hand comes down, right fingertips reach. Move with your breath. Inhale to the center, lengthen. Exhale to the side, taking the side stretch. Inhale to the center, lengthen up through the crown of the head. Let the shoulders relax. Exhale, take the side stretch. We'll do just a few more. Now, every time you come to the center, you are sitting up tall. But then when you tip over to the side, make sure that that hip stays down, the opposite hip stays down. So we don't want to lift and lean. We want the seat really firm on whatever it is you're sitting on, block, pillow, right on the mat, whatever it is. You are keeping your hips and your thighs really firmly grounded. Every pose has an anchor where you're really grounding and pushing and being very heavy, and here it's your seat. Okay, so return back to the center, lengthen up, fingertips reach up towards the ceiling. Exhale, drop the arms, turn and twist over to the right. Inhale, return to the center, lengthen up through the crown of the head. Exhale, drop the arms, turn and twist over to the left. Inhale to the center, lengthen, reach up. Exhale, rotate. Now, as you rotate, continue to lengthen. This is the one where we end up sort of slouching as we twist, and a slouch twist is not a very good, productive, or efficient twist. So we want to maintain length, but just rotate. Maintain the length, but then just rotate. Let's do one more on each side. I always like to do an extra twist. Twists, I think, are my favorite. So I always like to throw in an extra one. They feel good for me. Hopefully they do for you. Okay, and then return back to the center one more time. Inhale, exhale, let the arms come down. We are gonna do just one more stretch, and it's really quick and fast, but if you're sitting asymmetrically, change the cross of your legs. So put the other leg in front or on top. Notice how it feels probably very different. If it's uncomfortable, if it really doesn't feel good, and you're like, ugh, I don't like this, you don't have to do it. You can go back, but if it's in your power to do the opposite every once in a while, I really encourage you to do that. Whether it's the way you interlace your fingers, the way you cross your legs, which bag, you're probably not holding bags very often these days, but that sort of thing, try to change and do the opposite as much as you can. Okay, and we're gonna do a little bit of that here. So option one, I'm gonna turn just so you can see me. Option one is to just place your fingertips down on the ground behind you. It's easier if you're not sitting on quite as much. But you could just let your fingertips come down onto the ground behind you. Really, it's just my first two fingertips, doesn't even have to be all of them. But pushing down into the ground to lift your heart forward. So when we were just doing those actions of drawing the ribs forward and back, I was really encouraging you to draw the ribs forward, so your spine made this sort of C shape, or it's more sort of a backward C, I suppose. But now what I want is more of a lift upward. I want you to imagine that there's a string pulling your heart up towards the ceiling. You're not really thinking about coming forward. It's more of a lift. So you might push fingertips into the ground, lift your chest, maybe look up here. Or you might interlace your fingers behind you. This is a good opportunity to take the other grip you don't typically take. Really reach the knuckles down towards the floor. Knuckles won't touch the floor, but you're gonna reach the knuckles to the floor. Lift your chest. Again, imagine a string is pulling your heart up towards the ceiling, but also your collarbones are broadening. This is what we want to get into. We want to open the chest and the shoulders from all the sitting, especially if you're on a computer, a phone, a tablet, things like that. This gets really tight. So expand, open, broaden, grow, lengthen. Take a deep breath. And then slowly release your arms, release through the upper body. All right, we are gonna move into tabletop on all fours on our hands and knees. So I like to bring my blocks to the top two corners of your mat. If you don't have blocks, that's okay. But we're gonna meet in tabletop. Hands under shoulders, knees under hips. We're gonna be kneeling for a while. So if you have a towel or a blanket and you wanna put it under your knees, that's perfectly acceptable. Make sure that you're comfortable. I mentioned that when some of these stretches, and I'll talk about them when we're in them, that some of them might be tight, and there's one that usually makes me make a face for just a quick second. Those, when you feel that, that's in your muscles, not your bones or your joints. So I don't want your knees to feel like they've got to push through something, because that's not right. So muscles feeling something, that's okay. Bones and joints feeling something that makes you wince, that's really not okay. So there's a big distinction there too. Okay, let's get back to the movement. So from tabletop, walk your hands one whole handprint closer to the top of your mat. So farther away from your knees. Spread your fingers as wide as they'll go. Point your middle fingers forward towards the top of your mat. Okay. And if you're new to yoga and this doesn't feel so great on the wrists and or shoulders. I don't know why that was so hard to say. You might turn your hands out a little bit so your pointer fingers point towards the top of your mat. So if you're new to yoga, I would say pointer fingers point forward. If you're not so new to yoga, middle fingers point forward. Okay, now take a deep breath in. Exhale, come into an active child's pose. Reach your hips towards your heels, towards the back of your mat, like you're deeply bending your knees, but keeping the arms off the ground, elbows straight. Okay, really push the tops of your feet down into the ground and inhale, shift back into this tabletop. We're just gonna move here at the pace of the breath. So exhale as you shift back into this active child's pose. Inhale as you shift forward to tabletop. We'll do just a few more like this. Moving back and forth. And anytime you're doing something at the pace of the breath, the most important thing is that you are moving at the pace of your breath. Especially for something like this, it doesn't really matter if you inhale as you come forward or if you inhale as you go back. That's not the most important part. It's just that you are moving in sync with your breath, whatever that looks like. So let's do that one or two more times. And as we're getting into child's pose, we're starting to open through the lower back. You might feel that as your hips go towards your heels. Do you feel an opening through your lower back? All right, we're gonna stay for several more breaths, and you can keep it up just like this, or inhale as you shift forward to tabletop. Exhale, hook the toes under, downward facing dog, lift the knees up off the ground. Inhale, shift forward, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, downward facing dog. So swapping out every other
child's pose for a down dog, which is entirely optional. Downward facing dog is often underestimated. We put it in beginner classes, but it's not necessarily a beginner pose. But we're gonna move with the pace of the breath a few more rounds here. So maybe you skip down dog, maybe not. Do about maybe one more round, one more of each pose. Or if there's one pose you just want to stay in for a little bit, you could do that too. So find one of these poses that feel best for you and stay for about 3 breaths. So whether it's child's pose, tabletop, or down dog, take 3 deep breaths in one of those poses. Now from wherever you're at, let's all meet in downward facing dog. So if you're in tabletop or child's pose, just hook the toes under, reach the sit bones to the sky. And then once you're in downward facing dog, deeply bend your knees, look forward to the space between your thumbs and start to slowly walk. Take baby steps, walking your feet forward towards the top of your mat so they come in between your hands. Using blocks is really helpful here. Come into forward fold, Uttanasana. So your feet are about hip distance apart, toes point forward, your feet look like the number 11. And you might be softly bending your knees. I always like to encourage a soft bend in the knees for the first few forward folds of the practice, especially if you feel like your lower back and or the backs of your legs are tight. So soft bend in the knees isn't a bad idea, and you just let your upper body surrender to gravity and just feel heavy and hang. You might touch your toes, you might not. That really doesn't matter here. Just feel a comfortable stretch. Take a deep breath. Okay. Now firmly push the heels of your feet very firmly into the ground and inhale, lift up halfway, pause here. Now your hands can always come down onto your shins or your thighs, or if you've got blocks, you can always bring your hands on blocks. We always want to make sure the hands are under the shoulders, so make sure you position the blocks just so, if that's the route you're taking. Okay, now the hope is that your spine is parallel to the floor. It makes an equal sign with the floor. You're reaching the crown of your head forward, your tailbone back, your spine is long and lengthened. Keep up that long spine. Push the heels into the floor even firmer and inhale, rise. Reach your fingertips up towards the ceiling, come all the way up, maybe even look up, and then slowly bring your hands through to your heart. Pause here in mountain pose, Tadasana. Take a deep breath. Okay, all right. So here we'll move through some half sun salutations. We'll basically come in and out of forward fold a few times. So remember that in forward fold, you are more than welcome to bend your knees a little or a lot. And you also there's no expectation that you're able to touch your toes. Your forward fold, you might be really far away from the ground, and that's okay. We're just looking to stretch the back side. Okay, so shift the weight back into the heels. You should be able to wiggle your toes. You're pushing the heels into the ground to stand up tall. Remember, the long, tall spine creates space between the vertebrae. Really lengthen. And then inhale, reach the fingertips up towards the ceiling. Maybe you even look up towards the ceiling. Exhale, hinge at the hips, fold forward, Uttanasana. Letting your upper body surrender to gravity, feeling heavy and relaxed. Now push the heels into the ground. Inhale, lift up halfway, lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold forward, surrender again. Push the heels down, inhale, rise. Circle the arms. Fingertips to the sky, maybe even look to the sky. Let's do that 2 more times. Exhale, hinge at the hips, fold forward, Uttanasana, forward fold. Inhale, lift up halfway, lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold forward. Push the heels down. Inhale, rise up. Maybe even look up. One more. Exhale, hinge. Forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, lift up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold forward, surrender, drop the head, forward fold, push the heels down. Inhale, rise all the way up, maybe at a back bend. Bring your hands to your heart, take a deep breath here. Okay, all right. We are going to keep moving. So inhale, circle the arms up, maybe even look up. Exhale, hinge at the hips, fold forward, Uttanasana. Now from here, we're going to take some different movements. So from forward fold, deeply bend the knees, bring the hands onto something. Blocks are super helpful here. Step the right foot back and drop the right knee down onto the ground. We're coming to a low lunge. Now, right knee is going to be resting on the ground for a while. You might want to grab something and pad under the knee. Obviously, you don't have to. But again, joints and bones should never feel like they are getting anything too intense. So soften where you need to. All right, so for these movements, I like my hands on the blocks. Again, if you don't have blocks, that's okay. Hands can come to the thigh, or if fingertips can reach to the floor, that's great too. But what we're hoping for is that your torso is not resting on your thigh. It's okay if they touch, but we don't want to dump weight from the torso into the leg. That should be in the hands. Okay. Now, make sure that your left ankle is at least under, if not a little in front of the knee. So it shouldn't look like this. We don't want the ankle closer to the back leg. We want the front ankle, if anything, a little bit farther away. All right, now we are going to push down into the ground. The top of the right foot, the right shin, the right knee, the left heel, the hands, everything pushes down to lift up like you're really sitting up tall. And then allow your hips to come forward a little bit. You'll start to feel something in your right hip flexor, in the front of your right hip. Now this is the stretch that often makes me sort of make a face at first. I stretched my hip flexors quite a bit yesterday, so it's not making me want to make that face today, but usually it does. Maybe the left side will. But it might make you make a face real quick, but then it should subside. It's a stretch. You certainly should be able to say, right there, that's where I feel the stretch. It's very sort of localized and central, but it should be comfortable feeling. It should feel productive. It should say, you should be thinking, oh, that feels good, you know, something more along those lines. So this is your hip flexor. Your hip flexors are a group of muscle that connect your leg to your torso. Most times when you lift your foot up off the ground in a standing position or a seated position, your hip flexors is one of the muscles that has to do that work. So if you do a lot of walking, bike riding, the elliptical, there's always another one I say, I'm losing it, I don't know. But something where you're putting one foot directly in front of the other, more or less. So like not like tennis and not like, what are the things you do side to side? I don't know. But if you do things that are linear in a straight line, forward and back, this gets really tight. So tennis could make your hip flexors tight. I shouldn't say that. But especially if it's sort of forward in that linear line, this gets tight. I'll talk more about it, but we've got to keep going. Okay, so now from here, allow your hips to come back a little bit. The hope is that your right knee and your right hip are stacked. So the right thigh is no longer at a diagonal. Can you stack the right hip over the right knee? The femur, the right thigh bone, is a vertical line. Okay, so then we walk the hands back, because hands are always under shoulders, and crawl the left foot forward, so that the left leg is as straight as it will go, which might not mean a straight line, but as straight as your body, your hamstrings will allow, because we are now back into those hamstrings. We're going to open through the back of the left thigh. So you're going to push your left heel forward. Curl your left toes back like you're trying to point your toes back towards your face. You should feel a stretch through your calf and the hamstrings.
Okay, now we want to keep the hips kind of back. We don't want the hips to come forward, especially the left hip. Can you draw your left hip back towards the back of your mat, but continue drawing your left heel forward towards the front, but draw your left toes back towards the back. Okay, so there's a lot of things sort of being pulled in opposite directions. You should feel an opening through your left leg, the back of the left leg. You might stay here. I often like to stay upright. I've injured one of my hamstrings, and so I often like to stay upright, but this is not my injured side, so I'm gonna go a little bit further by lowering the heights of the blocks. And we'll see how low I go, probably not very low. And allowing your chest and your torso to come a little bit closer to your left leg. So I would prefer that you keep your back fairly flat instead of rounding here. You can round if it feels better to sort of drop your chin to your chest, let your head hang, almost like you're reaching your nose towards your knee. You can take that option. I like to keep my back flat, but that really is more of a personal preference. But continue drawing the left hip back, left heel forward, left toes back towards your face. Take 2 more deep breaths here. This is the half splits, Ardha Hanumanasana. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring the blocks back up where I had them, and then bend the left knee, plant the left foot back down onto the ground. Okay, now from here we're gonna take one more stretch on this side. So you're welcome to keep the back knee on the ground and focus on pushing down, lifting up, and leaning forward just a little bit to feel that stretch in the hip flexor. If you'd like a little bit more work, hook the back toes under, lift that knee up. Now, the knee won't straighten, the right knee will still be fairly bent, and we'll bring the hands to the top of the left thigh. So we're gonna lift the upper body no matter what. If that means that the right knee stays down, that's perfectly fine. Okay, I want you to think about really tucking your tailbone so you feel a stretch again in your hip flexor. I want you to feel something in the front of your right hip, and it won't happen if your belly is forward and your seat is out. You've got to tuck the tailbone, make this spot long. Okay, now let's come back to Yoga Mudra. Bring the hands, behind you. Interlace the fingers the way you don't typically interlace them, and then reach the knuckles back, like you're reaching your knuckles for that back heel, for your right heel. Keep tucking your tailbone. Draw your navel in towards your spine, your ribs towards the wall behind you as you reach your right thigh forward towards the front of your room. Really reach the knuckles back, expand through the chest and heart. Take a deep breath here. Release the hands. Bring the hands back down either to the thigh or the blocks, and then drop the right knee down. Okay, let the hips come back. Let the left knee come down. Maybe let your hips sway side to side before we, of course, do that on the second side. All right. So now again, you might want to keep some padding under your left knee, but we'll step the right foot forward, all the way forward in between the hands. And from wherever it comes, can you walk it forward just one more little scoot, one more little inch or so? Because again, we want the right knee and the right ankle making a vertical line once we've come forward. So the heel will probably be a little bit forward, a little closer to the top of your mat right now. That's okay, but we definitely don't want it behind the knee. All right. So you'll push the top of your left foot down, the left shin, the left knee, the right heel, both hands, push down to lift up, and then allow the hips to come forward a little bit. They might not need to come forward very much. Okay, but we're now opening through our left hip flexors. The hip flexors are, again, the group of muscle that connect the leg to the torso. Anytime you lift your foot up off the ground, your hip flexors are one of the muscle groups that chime in to do that movement. So if you can picture yourself sitting, your feet might be dangling. If you're short like me, your feet are sort of dangling off the chair, but your feet might be on the ground or hanging off the ground, but your knee is still in this upright position, sort of as if you were, walking. That same idea, right? The knee kind of comes up towards the chest. So when you're sitting, your hip flexors aren't working like they work when you are walking or running or bike riding or doing the elliptical, but they are shortening. They have that whole opportunity that you are sitting to get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Also, another thing that makes your hip flexors really tight is sleeping on your side. I sleep on my side, and I know that that's not really something you can just sort of change. But if you sleep on your side, your hip flexors have that time, especially if your knees are really tucked into your chest, they just get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. So sleeping and sitting and walking make your hip flexors really tight. So they are really tight on most people. All right, one more breath here. All right, and then we're gonna let the hips come back. We want the left hip to be over the left knee. Your left thigh, that femur, the thigh bone, should be a vertical line, straight up and down. And then we walk the hands back, so hands are under the shoulders. Lengthen the right leg, reach the right heel forward. Right toes curl back towards your face. Okay. So when we're doing all of these stretches, especially, you notice that we're not moving at the pace of the breath. We're holding these stretches for quite a while. And oftentimes when students take my class for the first time, I can sort of read it on their faces, and I can't read you at home, but I can usually read it in students' faces that they're not used to holding stretches this long. Part of the reason I like to hold these stretches this long is because I have a Hatha Iyengar background, which is the way we practice yoga in that style. But also, what I know about the body and anatomy is that when you're doing these static stretches, it takes at least 30 seconds for your muscles and your brain to communicate back and forth to sort of figure out what's happening. Your body has to assess, should I fight against what's going on, or should I relax? That's sort of fight or flight, right? So should I fight what is happening in this leg, or should I relax and let it do its thing? It takes at least 30 seconds for that to happen, for that sort of ping pong, what should I do? Now I'm getting this, now I think this, da 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 da. And so you want to hold these stretches for at least 30 seconds. Anything less than that, you really weren't as productive as you probably think you were. So we got to hold these stretches for a while. So a few more last moments here. Draw the right hip back, the right heel forward, right toes back. Feel the length in the back of the right leg. You might feel a lot in your calf. That's okay too. Calves are tight too. These are just sort of the main points that I wanted to get. The calves would have been my next one. Had we had more time, we would have spent even more time on calves. Okay. One more deep breath here. Okay, and then we'll come forward again, bend the right knee, plant that foot. Now, we are going to do one more stretch on this side. Again, this is where we're going to lift the upper body and take a chest opener. The back knee is more than welcome to stay on the ground, but if you're looking for a little bit more work, you'll hook the back toes under, lift that knee up off the ground. It doesn't have to lift high. You'll bring your hands to the top of your right thigh and lift your torso. Now, I want the left heel off the ground, the left knee bent so you can tuck your tailbone. I want the ribs back towards the back of your mat, your pubic bone and your pelvis forward so you feel that stretch in your left hip flexor. Hopefully you're still feeling it. Your hip flexors are that group of muscles. One of those muscles is your psoas. Maybe you've heard that's sort of the latest thing is opening your psoas. That's your psoas. Okay. So now instead of taking the yoga mudra position, let's take goalpost position. So the arms are going to come up to the sides. So I'll show you from the front. So your elbows make a right angle. Elbows are at the height of the shoulders. We often tend to want to let them drop. Can you lift? So from elbow to elbow, you're a straight line. Okay, so palms face forward, elbow to elbow, you're a straight line. Now can you squeeze your back muscles to propel your heart forward? It's not just bringing the arms back. That's totally different. I want your upper back and your back muscles, even your mid back, to squeeze so it pulls your arms back. You are engaging the back muscles to draw the arms back so you feel an opening through your chest and shoulders. Let's stay for one more breath. Keep tucking the tailbone, squeezing the back muscles, and then bring the hands down,
deeply bend the left knee, let it drop down. Okay, now you can bring the right knee back down. We'll come back to tabletop. And from tabletop, we're gonna take a seat so you can get rid of whatever was maybe under your knees. We're gonna come to a comfortable seat with the legs forward. Okay. Sort of move at a diagonal. Okay, so sit with the legs forward, push the heels forward, toes point up towards the ceiling. Let's keep the right leg where it's at, bend the left knee. All right, we're gonna come into a seated twist. So you've got lots of options here. The bottom of the foot, we need it flat on the ground, and it can be to the inside of the thigh, but listening to your lower back and your outer hips, which we didn't get into today, you might place the foot to the outside of your thigh. If you choose to do that, the base of your big toe should be firmly down. That's one part of your anchor in this pose. The other part is the left sit bone. So can you push the left sit bone down and the left base of the big toe down so they are firm and grounded? And you can sit up tall. Keep your torso facing forward, but bring your left hand behind you like it's reaching for the back left corner of your mat. Right fingertips will reach to the sky. Inhale, lengthen the spine, sit up tall. Exhale, take a twist over to the left. Now you can use your right arm and wrap it around your left thigh and hug it in. Then you'll feel a deeper stretch in your glute. Or you might hook your tricep, your upper arm, to your quad, your upper thigh, and you might use that as leverage to twist and rotate a little deeper. Really think about turning your heart over to the left and maybe even look over your left shoulder. If you're spending a lot of time looking at screens, maybe you stretch your eyes and you look out of the left corner of your eyes as much as you can. Try to find a drishti, a focal point, something to look at, something that won't move. Keep flexing your right foot, pushing the base of the left big toe down. Sit up tall, elongate the spine, take a deep breath. Blink your eyes back to neutral. Return your head, neck, shoulders, arms, spine, and legs. Okay, and we will do the same thing on the second side. I'm gonna stay where I'm at. So now we're gonna keep the left leg long, bend the right knee, bottom of the foot flat onto the ground. It absolutely could stay here. The twist is no more or less depending on this leg. That's fine if it stays here, but maybe you bring the foot to the outside of the thigh, the base of the big toe down, the right sit bone down. These have to come down into the ground. Again, they're your anchor. Left heel pushes forward, left toes to the sky. Crown of the head up as you push your right fingertips down like you're reaching for the back right corner of your mat. Left fingertips reach up, sit up, elongate, lengthen, inhale, exhale, take the twist over to the right. Now again, the arm can wrap around the leg or the tricep can hook on the quad, whatever you prefer, but continue to lengthen and rotate. Turn your heart deeply over to the right. Maybe even look over your right shoulder. Maybe you stretch through your eyes and you look out of the right corners of your eyes as much as you can. See if you can pass the spot that you had on side one. Find that spot and can you go even past it? Keep pushing your left heel forward, base of the right big toe down, right sit bone down, crown of the head up, shoulders relaxed, take a deep breath. Blink your eyes back to neutral, return head and neck, shoulders, arms, spine, and legs. You can kind of bounce through the legs, move them around a little bit. All right, so we are gonna move into our pose that requires our props. So whether you've got paper towel rolls, pillows, blocks, whatever, a bolster, we're coming into fish pose. So I will obviously be demonstrating this with the blocks. If you've really ever taken even one class with me, you probably have done fish pose. This is one of my favorite poses, and I can get into that in a moment. But why? Because it's beneficial for you, and I'll get into that
in a moment. But so if you're taking fish pose with blocks, your setup will look something like this. You are essentially making the letter T and placing it at the back edge of your mat. The block that's on its lowest height, that's parallel to the length of your mat, that's on its lower height, and this is where sort of your mid-back and your sort of ribs rest. And then this one is one height higher. It's perpendicular to the length of your mat. It's that top part of the letter T. It's one height up, and this is where your head will rest. Now, option one is to position yourself just like this. If you are more flexible, if you are more open, if you would consider yourself not quite as tight in your upper body, you might bring these up each a height. This is much deeper. And something to remember that maybe 6 weeks ago, this was very much a part of your practice, but if you have not been stretching, practicing yoga, moving around as much now as you were before, remember that. So do not force your body into something because, well, I used to do it, or I usually do it. You've got to set your ego aside and really listen to what your body needs. Okay, but if you're using like paper towel rolls, same sort of thing, you're gonna make the letter T. If you're using pillows, you're probably just gonna stack them in one long line, whatever you need. But you are gonna take a seat facing away from the blocks. What works for me is I usually spread my hand, I let my thumb touch my lower back and my pinky touch the block. And that's usually about how much space I need. And then you come down onto your back. I think that was, there we go. Okay. So you come down onto your back. I like to come onto my elbows and my forearms to sort of center this first block, make sure it's not crooked or wonky or doing anything askew. And then second block is under the head. All right, so knees can be bent, feet can be flat on the ground, or you can lengthen your legs along the mat. And it might take some adjusting. Again, like I said, this is one of my very favorite poses, and it still takes me some time to adjust and fidget and wiggle. Okay. All right. So once you have positioned yourself, your legs might be bent or they might be long. Arms can come out in opposite directions, palms face up. Sometimes that makes my hands fall asleep, so I like my arms a little bit closer at a diagonal. But if arms can come out to the side, that is more in line with the more ideal situation. Arms out in opposite directions with the palms facing up is going to open your chest and shoulders even a little bit more. It's a very subtle difference, but it's there, so you might as well take it. But again, if that's not practical for you, my arms often fall asleep in this pose, so I just bring them down so they're more at a diagonal, sort of a 45-degree angle from the spine. Okay, so you find yourself in a comfortable position and you let your body relax, you let your body melt into the shape of this pose, the shape of the blocks. You let your eyelids feel heavy so that your eyes eventually close. And we're gonna stay here for several moments, just letting the body relax. I'm gonna talk about the benefits of this pose and the style behind and the reasoning behind this pose, but you are welcome to tune me out. That's perfectly fine. We just wanna avoid the mind wandering completely. So if you have your own mantra or your own intention that you'd like to silently repeat to yourself now, you absolutely can tune me out and do that. But don't tune me out to start making your grocery list or to start thinking about what you're gonna have for dinner tonight. That's not really what I mean. Those are very different, and I hope you can see that distinction. Okay. But for most of us, it's really tough to just be in a pose in silence, so I will kind of walk you through this if you need it. All right. So what we're in here is fish pose, supported fish pose, which is a back bend. Now, most of the time when you are sitting, you are in a forward bend. You're slouching, you're slumping. You've got quote unquote bad posture, as most of our mothers would say. And so here we're doing the opposite. We've created the opposite shape in the upper body. Your heart can now expand, your chest can open, your shoulders can stretch. The whole front side of the torso can open up. And this is a space that gets very tight
from sitting, from slouching, from hunching forward. And so notice what you're feeling here in those spaces, especially the chest and shoulder and spine. The stretch might be intense. It might be mild. It depends on what your body is used to and what you've been doing lately. So again, what you were doing 6 weeks ago is not really an indication of how you'll feel today. What have you been doing this last week? What did you do yesterday? That sort of thing. So if this pose feels more mild or more intense than normal, that's okay. This is not normal, what's going on now, and so your body will not feel normal. Be gentle. Observe the present moment. And I will give you some moments of silence, but one more thought here. Because we're using these props, whatever your props are, if they're formal or informal DIY props, makes no difference. Let the props do the work. So instead of contracting your muscles and fighting gravity and curling in and lifting up and engaging, can you soften? Can you melt? Can you imagine that gravity has a really strong effect on your body and you're just sort of melting into the props and the floor beneath you. You are not working, you are not exerting, you are soft and relaxed. We'll stay for a few more breaths. Take 3 more deep breaths here in fish pose. And then slowly start to deepen your breath. And bring soft movements throughout your body. Let your head rock side to side. Wiggle fingers and toes, ankles and wrists, arms and legs. Be fairly soft and calm and quiet here. But bend your knees, bring your feet flat onto the ground, and slowly roll all the way off your props onto your side in a tucked fetal position, resting your ear on your arm to support your head and neck. Pause for a big, deep breath. And then again, trying to be as calm and soft as possible. Remove the blocks, just set them off to the side. And then roll onto your back. Come onto your back with your knees bent and your feet flat. Arms can rest wherever's comfortable. Just notice the way that your spine feels now that it's back on one flat, continuous surface. You're not on a mat with your seat and 2 blocks with different sections of your spine. Your spine is on one level, even, continuous surface. How does it feel? Take a deep breath in. Then as you breathe out, hug your knees into your chest. Maybe rock from side to side. Trace circles with your knees. Point and flex your feet, ankle circles, whatever you need. Give yourself a few moments. And just something to think about. This is hard for me to do in a video, but something I feel the responsibility to pass it on. One thing that I've been told over and over again is a really great movement to stretch through your chest and your shoulders and through especially your neck muscles, is to lay on your bed on your back, but scoot down so your head hangs off the bed, so you're sort of looking upside down in your bedroom. Or you could do this, I suppose, it's tough to do on a couch, but with your head sort of upside down, hanging off the bed, even for just a minute, that will help open all this stuff up. But that's not something we would sort of do in a yoga class. But for those of you who want to keep stretching, and you're home, you've got a bed, you've got something you can do that on, that's a really good one too. So yeah, even if you could just do it for a minute. Okay, all right. We are going to come down onto our back. We are setting up for Shavasana. So I always like to bring something under the back of my head for Shavasana. You do not have to do that. I am actually going to come up to a seat, but you can stay on your back. All right, so you are going to stay on your back, and you are going to find yourself in the most comfortable position that you can possibly imagine. So maybe that means you've got to go grab a blanket or socks or turn a light off or something, because we're hoping to come to a calmer, quieter, softer energy. And so you make that happen however you got to make it happen. Excuse me. And you come down onto your back. And you let your eyelids feel heavy so that they close. And you allow every muscle, every joint, every fiber of your physical being, you let it relax. So to do this, imagine a wave of relaxation washing over you. Starting at your toes, relaxing your toes, your feet, and your ankles. You relax your shins, your calves, your knees and thighs. You soften your hips and glutes. You free any tension from your lower back, mid back, and upper back. Relax through the shoulders, the arms, through the elbows, the forearms, wrists, hands, fingers. This wave of relaxation washes over you, traveling up your chest, your throat, neck, and jaw. You can soften your lips and tongue, cheeks and nose, eyes, eyebrows, forehead. Soften your hairline, your scalp, even imagining relaxing your brain, letting the brain feel heavy, fall closer to the back
of the skull closer to the earth, so that every part of you is relaxed. You are relaxed on the outside as well as relaxed on the inside. Slowly deepen your breath. And as you deepen your breath, create soft, small movements throughout your body. Let your head rock from side to side. Run your thumbs over the rest of your fingers as you wiggle your toes. Roll your wrists and ankles. Move your arms and legs. You can reach your arms overhead, stretching as if you just woke up from a long nap. Fingertips and toes in opposite directions. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, hug your knees in towards your chest. And slowly roll over onto either side in a tucked fetal position, resting your ear on your arm to support your head and neck. keeping your eyes closed and using the strength of both arms. Push down into the ground and come up to a comfortable seat. And take a moment here to thank yourself for making it to your mat today, or making it to your mat today. Congratulations, you did it. And maybe you reflect on your intention. What is it that brought you to your mat to begin with? Loka samasta sukhi no bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. And may the thoughts, words, and actions of my life contribute in some way to the happiness and the freedom for all. Now slowly join your hands together in front of your heart in Anjali Mudra, with the palms together and the thumbs softly resting on the collarbones. To seal our practice, we'll chant the sound of Om one time. Om is the oldest and most sacred mantra. It's said to be the seed sound, the first sound that ever existed. All other sounds stemmed from the sound of Om. It's also said to be the sound of the universe. It's said to live in all living things. It is within us and it unites us together. So again, we will chant the sound of Om one time. You are welcome to listen or join me. But let's start with a deep and clearing breath. Inhale for Om. The light or the good in me acknowledges, respects, and bows to the light or the good in you. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me again. My name is Lauren and I am the Yoga and Fitness Program Coordinator at McFetridge. And this entire sequence was meant to be, again, to help out your body after all the sitting, whether you're, again, sitting on the couch, sitting at the kitchen, at the desk, whatever, kind of trying to counteract all of those things. And so even though this practice was over an hour, you can take little bits. If there's a pose, if there's a part, if there's the ending, the beginning, whatever that you like, and you just want to do 10 minutes, you could do that. That's perfectly fine. So know that you don't always have to sit down and do 75 minutes of yoga or whatever it is. You could do 2 minutes of yoga. If you're one of those people, really quick, one more thing, moving your spine, that's always my suggestion. You could still be sitting at your desk. It's not really going to help your hip flexors and your hamstrings, but doing those movements that we did here when we were just seated and we were moving with the breath, it was just those 3 movements. That's always my first suggestion to students. If you want to do something, if you want to stretch, if you want to spend 1 minute, you want to do one pose, those movements of the spine are always the ones I suggest, especially to help with this. So thank you so much for joining me, for following along, for doing whatever it is that you did. Even if you skipped a lot of parts, you still did something. And you made it all the way to the end, even in this little rant that I'm doing. So thank you so much. I hope to see you soon in real life really soon. Bye.